All right, so Christina Ubel, co-owner of Clute Wealth Management. And we have offices in both South Burlington and in Plattsburgh, New York. Like Heidi said, we do specialize in providing financial strategies for women in transition, and we often work with small business owners. I am on the board of the WBON and enjoying it and looking forward to some years ahead on that. For panic, I was trying to think of that. I would say that I think planning, I think it's a lot of the last minute calls that we get from clients that need to accomplish something before the end of the year that kind of makes us a little bit busier than normal. And then just being prepared for January, because January tends to be pretty busy for us. So that's really where I'm at. I know that the goals thing for everybody and having to, or Pat, we've had the same thing where we've been deferring for the last couple of years because of COVID. And I agree with you. We don't know, will these be accomplished in 2022, or are we going to have to put them out even longer? So we kind of are on a wait and see. And before everybody got on, Mary Claire and I were talking about, we've learned to be very flexible with COVID. So if it happens, great. And if it doesn't, then we will just put it off for now and wait until the time is right. All right, so thanks for having me here today to help you kick off the fourth quarter. We are almost at the end of the year. And while it's often filled with stress because of all of our year-end must-dos, like we were all just talking about, my hope is for you all to leave here today feeling eager and prepared for facing the end of the year. And personally, I tend to feel better when I have a checklist of things that I can mark off, which I keep on my desk at all times. And so for that reason, I came up with a year-end checklist just for this, and figured it would help me keep focus on the priorities and should hopefully do the same thing for you, which is why I'm going to share it with you today. So one of the most common hurdles that we face as small business owners is keeping our personal and our business lives separate and our finances separate. So, and this is especially hard for small business owners, sole proprietorships, because it's a little bit more complicated when you have multiple owners. So you really can't get a chance to commingle. But when you're an individual, it's so easy to just keep everything together. So we can't stress enough how critical it is to just keep them separate. So if you're just starting out, although I think most of us here today are established business owners, but even if you've been in your business a while and you can't say for sure where that line is between the personal and business, then the best piece of advice I can give you is to start the new year fresh, have them separate. Start next year with the clarity that you are running your business like a business, which means everything from separate emails, separate phone numbers, separate bank accounts, using QuickBooks versus Quicken, having business insurance. All of that stuff makes you feel like your business is a business. And while that probably seems overwhelming, especially to somebody new starting out, making sure that you have your CPA or advisor or business coach that can help you guide through the process, or even all of the above, it's really critical to have somebody there that you can lean on for support and ask those questions. So today we're going to focus on the business year-end checklist, which is on the left-hand side of my screen. Hopefully it's on the left-hand side of your screen too. But we don't want to forget that the financial health checkup, which is on the other side, is equally important, but that's more focused on our personal lives rather than our business lives. So the year-end checklist, it uses the term year-end, but I think that it would be great if we could do some of these things throughout the year in order to make our lives a little bit easier. So throughout, I'll just mention which ones can be done earlier in the year versus having to wait until the year end and scrambling. Now we want everybody to be able to use this checklist and make it work for them. So we've added some blank lines to the bottom. Fill in there whatever applies to your business that may not apply to others. Cross out anything that you think isn't worthwhile for you. For instance, in our business, Heidi and I have to do what's called year-end tax loss harvesting. So that would be something that we would just write in here, which probably means nothing to anybody else, but it is a critical thing for us to do and something that has to wait until the end of the year for us to do. So we are going to dive right in and talk about that thing that seems to overwhelm us both in our business lives and our personal lives, and that's the financials. And actually the solution is pretty simple to this. First, make sure everything is kept separate, as we already discussed. Second, use QuickBooks to track everything for you. Third, work with a bookkeeper or a CPA that can help you get it set up and then also teach you how to use it. And better yet, pay them to do it most of the time for you. So once you're set up in QuickBooks, you can quickly and easily run a profit and loss statement, look at your expenses, and be able to compare them to previous periods once you're set up for a little while. We do have do-it-yourself forms from our financial go bag, such as the profit and loss, the business cash flow, and the balance sheet. But there is a little bit more time and effort involved when you have to complete these things manually. Now, once you have the profit and loss and the balance sheet complete, then you don't want to put them to the side. You actually want to use them because the information held within them is critical for being able to understand the health of your business, which is why anytime that you go to apply for credit, they're always required. You can use them to see how good your year is, if there's ebbs and flows to your business, if there are expenses that have dramatically changed, and you can actually pinpoint where that's happening. You can check to see if there's cash on hand for an emergency, such as a temporary shutdown that we had last year, or if there's even extra cash to help pay for something else that's going to be on your checklist. So using these forms is critical, so much information. All right, so I can't see you guys, so I'm going to ask you to verbally tell me if anybody here has ever done a SWOT analysis on their business before.
Yes, and it looks like most other people are raising their hands as well.
All right, great. So we'll start with you, Melanie, since you answered. Would you mind sharing if you did your SWOT, or since you did your SWOT, is there something that you learned from it that spurred a change in your business?
Yes. I haven't done one this year now that I'm thinking of it. But I think one of the main things it prompted me to do was look at pricing structures and comparisons to kind of market rates for my services.
That is great. And so how long ago was that?
That was about 2 years ago that I did the analysis, but I didn't update the pricing until this year.
Okay, well, that makes sense with everything going on.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for sharing. And all right, so you said just about everybody. So Mary Claire, you want to go next?
Yeah, and actually I'm not just about every, whoops, hang on. Am I still, no, wasn't sure if I was still muted. I actually haven't done one in recent years. I think I did one years ago when I was working with a business coach. So I can't really offer anything except now I'm looking at this and going, oh, I want to do this. Because I really like the idea that you're looking at all of these things like the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities, and
threats.
Yeah, the threats. So I can put COVID as a big threat, certainly for me, but but I mean, do you have suggestions, advice on how you do this once a year?
So yeah, I mean, I would recommend doing it once a year. And, thank you for sharing what SWOT stands for. I was going to do that, but everybody here already knows strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and really just identifying them. And Mary Claire, you made a perfect example in that sometimes just being aware of something is important, and it might not be something that you can do about it. So COVID is definitely an external threat that we can't do anything about, but being aware of how it could potentially impact our business should it happen or continue. That's really the best that we can do with that. Once a year is great for doing these. If you worked with a business coach before to do it, you could do that again or try to do it on your own. I had a note that it doesn't have to be time intensive, right? You can just kind of take a step back and just think of some things that you are aware of in the back of your mind and actually write them down.
Yeah.
And I think that formalizes it a little bit. So I know, Heidi, I already know that we did our SWOT, so I was gonna share something about that. So I'm gonna skip over you, and Pat, did you have anything to share with the SWOT?
That's of course one of my favorite tools.
Yeah.
We do them for every marketing plan for each client on an annual basis. Revisit one thing, and we find actually that the revisiting, if you've got if you've worked with a coach or consultant at some point in time, so you have a rather detailed SWOT analysis, and together you agreed on that simply pulling out what you have and reviewing it. And as you said, Christina, taking some time to look at it and say, okay, is this still valid? And what has changed? And COVID was a perfect example that all of us had that in our threat, external threats. And I think the other thing that I can share, because it's something we do a lot of, is that I find many, particularly women business owners, do not do the work on the strengths and the opportunities. They don't acknowledge as much, they don't focus on, okay, this is what I'm really good at.
They focus on the negative.
And my business strengths, and so that they don't enhance that. But even more, the opportunities piece.
Mm-hmm.
That there are, countless times, but where, and particularly women, in fact, I cannot think of one of our clients who happens to be a male gender, where I've had to say, this is huge. You can really run with this. How are you going to make it happen? How are you, I do not have to say that to the male clients. They're usually saying to me, okay, how do we make it happen now? But the women-owned business, anyway, it's just an observation of mine.
That's great.
But I think it's a very powerful tool, and translating your insights on it into action.
Right, absolutely. And that's actually the next thing. I was going to say something to that. I don't even remember, if that's okay. So Andy, right? That is our other guest here today.
So I want to thank Pat for drawing attention to that often gender disparity of looking at our weaknesses rather than our strengths, because that's exactly what I was going to do. But I would, so one of the weaknesses and market threats for me is the fact that I'm a solopreneur, and I resist getting a VA or outsourcing the work. So I am my own bottleneck for all sorts of ways I could be growing my business and building capacity and freeing myself up to do the strategic work when I'm working on website corrections and stuff that I could be handing off. So I'd say I'm both my biggest strength and my biggest weakness.
I think that is true for many solopreneurs and many of us that are business owners, even with a team, because we think that we can get it done better ourselves, right? It's just faster, easier. And actually, one of the examples, so we recently did a SWAT last week. And it was just a quick overview and during our quarterly meeting about what it is that we're looking forward to in 2022. And we identified 3 things from our SWAT, and that one, we do need a new hire beginning in January because our team needs it. 2, that we need a new client management system, which we knew that, but we've kind of put it off a little bit. And then 3, an opportunity is that we want to find an attorney that specializes in drafting charitable trusts, as more and more of our clients want to match their money with their values. And so we want to be able to help them in that way and really be able to pull in somebody that knows what they're doing with that. So SWATs are great, a great way to take a deep dive into your business and really look at it and see what's working, what's not working, and then just being aware of some other things that could potentially affect us. Heidi, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure. I think I look at SWATs quite differently and quite similarly as everybody else. I do agree with Pat that part of our marketing plan, part of what makes us good at what we do is our strengths. And I had a business coach years ago that said to me, if you just focus on your weaknesses, you'll get really good weaknesses. So you should focus on your strengths, because with your strengths, you can improve them, build them out, increase opportunities, exploit other areas to expand your business if that's your goal. And I think as far as threats, most people, and Mary Claire did post in the chat, sometimes COVID is not a threat for certain people. And people can grow because of that. I know for us, it's been quite different. I found it refreshing to be able to work remote. I find I get more work done. You miss the face-to-face in the same room, but it also allows the ability to work anywhere. And it expands the reach of what our company, where we can work. And I'm finally seeing into that houses of clients that are out of state that have been clients for years, and to connect with them face to face is unique versus telephone. So I think that's kind of interesting. But I do think we all need to always look at the competition, and that to me would fall under threats and or fall under weaknesses and or fall under strengths. And
So many things are both.
It can be all the above. So depending upon what the competition is doing, how do you stand out? And I think focusing on your strengths and opportunities, you can do both. So that's a quickie of my SWAT. I think SWATs are awesome. They do take some work, and you can research the market. And I think we should all always do that.
Oh, go ahead.
I really appreciate what Pat and Heidi have said about, as a rule, we tend to not always focus on our strengths. We tend to look at our weaknesses. And I know I've made a really effort as a solo in the past 10, 15 years to really focus on my strengths. And of course, certainly as I market myself, I want to do that. But the other thought I had was when I mentioned that for some COVID was an opportunity, that I found the people that have weathered COVID the best are those that looked at COVID as an opportunity as opposed to a threat, and looked at it as a way to either completely change their business model or, as Heidi said, expand into areas they hadn't, or reach out to people that hadn't been in their client mix before, or maybe hadn't been for a while. So it is interesting how on that external end, particularly, that threats and opportunities could actually switch back and forth, I would think, as you're looking at this.
And you can definitely thrive with it. I mean, last year, we decided, because we couldn't see our clients face to face, to offer a monthly lakeside chat where anybody that wants to come on and join us in a Zoom meeting, and we'll have speakers, kind of like the WBON chapter meetings, that come on and speak about Medicare or estate planning or what's going on in the markets, gardening, there all kinds of conversations. But we really use it as an opportunity to be able to branch out a little bit from the financial side of stuff and still be able to stay in contact, especially for those that might not have any other outside connections. And so we wanted to use it as an opportunity, you know, and it can make you thrive if you're challenged. And to add to the SWOT analysis, and I'm going to use the term loosely, but doing an internal SWOT would be great. And Andy, this will really help you in being able to make a list of things that you love to do, hate to do, have to do, and don't have to do. And then if you find that you are going to hire someone because your SWOT analysis shows that a weakness is maybe not having an extra set of hands to be able to expand your business in a certain direction, then you could always start them off with the responsibilities of things that you hate to do, and maybe also the ones that you don't want to have to do, and or you could even eliminate those, but that's a whole other conversation about simplifying your business. But, you know, one is a SWOT analysis on your business, but then another one could be an internal SWOT on personally what you feel like doing. That's just a thought. Anybody else have anything to add here before we move on?
I have a comment on that.
Sure.
When I first started out in business, I didn't make enough money to hire people. I hired a business coach, and he said to me something that's stuck with me all these years. He said to me, hire somebody before you need somebody. We also did these retreats, and these retreats, there was a financial planner who had an accident. He had a traumatic brain injury, and he would work 12 hours a day, and he could only work 3 hours a day. So they made us through this exercise, write down everything we do in a day, a total mind dump. And then he said, okay, you can only work 3 hours a day. How are you going to spend your day? And it really gives you clarity on the kind of things you're doing that aren't the highest and best use of your time, that aren't generating revenue, that are not high task jobs that your special skill set can do. And that was really instrumental in outsourcing everything I don't like to do, everything I don't want to do, and everything that's not the highest and best use of my time.
Agreed. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you all for sharing during that. Oh, go ahead.
Christina, I just want to let you know that Eve is with us, Eve Dubois. So we have
Good morning, Eve. I can't see anybody right now, so I know that, hello, you can see me. Hi.
Yes.
Eve, do you, I don't know where you came in, but we're talking about SWOT analysis, and if you've used one before, and if so, did it add anything to your business or spur any change, or maybe just your general thoughts on a SWOT that you want to share?
Well, I definitely feel like one of the big things in my profession, which is bookkeeping, nowadays is just flexibility and being able to navigate the changes. A couple weeks ago, Intuit made a big change that heavily impacted my business, and I was not happy about it. But Intuit is, you know, the giant of the business world, so so we had to adapt, and so, you know, just being able to put aside the frustrations and keep moving forward and finding ways to keep doing what we do.
Yeah. Like it's again one of those things that you have no control over, but affects
Exactly.
our business. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Those
Exactly.
sometimes are the most frustrating. May I ask, what was the change?
So they went to a single sign-on. It does not impact you know, businesses that use QuickBooks Online, but for those of us who are pro advisors, they linked their timekeeping software, with their accounting software, and with their payroll software. So where we used to have choices and didn't have to use Intuit for everything, now we have to make a choice. Do we use Intuit for everything or do we not? And in order to keep using Intuit, either we do it their way or we find our own processes to do it, the way that we want to do it. So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
All right, so moving on, now that the hard work is done, and the hard work being the financials and having all of those documents in place and having your SWOT done, then we get to move on to the fun stuff, which I think that we touched on a little bit on the last slide, which is goal setting. And using the information that you found out from the financials and the SWOT can really help you determine where you would like to see your business in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years from now. And then working backwards to determine what short-term goals need to be met in order to help you reach those longer-term goals. And then being able to also see maybe where any of that excess cash that you've determined that you have from your financials can be put to work to help you reach those. So Pat, you're going to love this, but I suggest that once you have your goals set, then working with a marketing professional to have a game plan for how you're going to be able to find new clients or customers, updating your social media to be more relevant in any industry changes that you identify during your SWOT analysis, to get your name and message out there just to be visible. And, I know that it's important to remember that marketing is not advertising. It's more about establishing with yourself within the community with a good reputation, and really just getting to be known out there. And so I would ask if anybody here uses a marketing professional. Andy or Eve, would either of you like to start with that? Heidi, I already know your answer.
I actually don't use a marketing professional at this point. We receive enough referrals from CPA firms and other clients that we work with that it's what we can handle. So
yeah, don't want to. Does anybody?
I am looking at starting a newsletter just because to inform my clients about changes that are happening and things that they need to be aware of.
That's a big undertaking.
Yeah.
So does anybody here engage with a marketing professional, and what made you decide to do that?
Well, I have a business coach that helps me on marketing strategy, and then I've hired ad buyers who specialize in Facebook ads, social media ads, Google ads for specific project buys. But I don't keep anyone or an organization on retainer, just project specific.
Gotcha.
Help.
Heidi, what do you think led you to get a marketing professional?
Well, I audited a class from a college called Entrepreneur. So I did a business plan on my business, and I discovered there were so many aspects of the business that I didn't have the skill set to do, nor the understanding of things I should be paying attention to. One of them was marketing. Another one was HR. Another one was the legal aspects. So I went on a quest and hired a marketing firm to do the marketing plan, to know who my target demographic is, how I reach them, how I understand their likes and dislikes. Then I hired a CPA firm to deal with the books and records. Then I hired a bookkeeper. Then I hired a business attorney. Then I hired an HR person to help me do standards for the staff and help me understand fringe benefits. So it was really going through the business plan, really highlighted all the things I should be paying attention to, and really, frankly, didn't understand that. And realizing there's not enough time in the day, you've got to outsource that stuff, and you could do it cost effectively, like Andy's doing it, per diem, hire people to do projects. And we did that on and on until we could bring, some of the bookkeeping in-house, and we still outsource lots, and it's a lot less expensive. You get experts and you leverage your time.
Absolutely. Melanie or Mary Claire, do you have anything that you want to share with us?
Well, I have off and on used marketing experts, hired them. And also I've off and on over the years hired people with bookkeeping experience, and I'm trying to think over the years. Yeah, so I've outsourced a lot, but it is hard, I think, as a solo entrepreneur to fight that urge to try to do everything yourself. And I think it was either I was doing some goal setting or probably all the wise businesswomen I happen to know out there have advised me to outsource those things that I know I'm not good at and take me away from doing the work I really love to do. But it is often, I mean, I talk to other solos, and it's really hard for them, and I understand it because I struggle with it still, to say, oh, I can't do this, I should outsource it. And to me, the best thing about outsourcing a marketing person is that you learn how to keep your name out there. It's not just a one-time thing. You also, it helps, for me, it helped me focus on what my market was, who they are, what I needed to do to stay in front of that market all the time. So it's I think, invaluable advice, but as a solo, I understand when people hesitate to outsource, because as women, of course, we just feel we can do everything and we have to do everything. And of course, the best advice, like Heidi said, is really follow your skill strengths and outsource those things that are not your strengths and that other people can do better. So
Yeah.
That's all I would say.
And, you know, cost is a factor too, right? I mean, as a solopreneur,
Mhm.
they're, you know,
I would
you're
just
dealing
add
with that.
one thing to what folks have said, which is to me, it's either outsourcing things that you're not necessarily a strength of yours, but you can be excellent in them, but you hate doing them. It's just not how
Yeah.
you want to spend your time. And that, for me personally, you know, having been a management consultant, I mean, I always use the example of, I was for years, and I maintained it when I was in higher ed, I'm a certified management accountant. And which, for those who don't know, it's a, you know, CPA does public sort of accounting and all, but a CMA helps organizations or businesses basically with their internal sort of financing. It's like a CFO sort of thing. And I did that for years in higher ed, but I hated it. It was an entree as a woman for credibility in higher ed. And so but I hated it. So as soon as I could relieve myself of doing that for my own business, I have relieved myself of doing that for my own business. So I just want to caution, it's not that you, and I think that's true for a number of us. So, because I feel a little, and I think this is also a gender leaning thing, that we say, oh, well, I'm not good at it, so I'll put it. So, but you should not outsource something that you know absolutely nothing about. Because unless you have someone else on your team, because you need to understand enough of it or be working with someone to be able to evaluate it and make sure that it's a good match for you. So, so I would just sort of add that, so you don't, and Mary Claire, you know, it's not that, you know, you're terrible at it. It's that you choose to not spend your time that way. So stop putting yourself down.
Oh,
It is great, you know, advice. Don't put yourself down.
and I wasn't aware I was doing that. So, but anyway, okay, thank you. No, I don't like to do that. But I think that's good.
Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I got it off. Of not outsourcing something you don't know anything about. Though, I mean, I outsourced legal stuff, putting together the LLC and all that stuff, but I knew a little about that. So maybe that can,
But I was going to say, but it should be in English so that you know what you're doing.
oh yeah, I'm totally about,
even though,
yes.
I mean, you're not a licensed attorney, so.
no. Next life.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing. Oh, Melanie, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Trying to think. I guess I haven't outsourced a whole lot. It's been more project specific. And I often will revisit that and go, okay, is this something I could hire somebody else for? And often the answer ends up being no, more because when I look at it, it's just such a small task that the amount of time to find somebody and train somebody just doesn't really seem worth it. So I think at some point some of those tasks will build up to the point that's necessary, but right now it hasn't been.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so this next task is possible to tie in with the goals section, but I gave determined technology needs its own spot because sometimes we need to update our technology out of sheer necessity versus just trying to keep up on industry trends. So I shared earlier that our SWOT analysis helped us determine that a new contact management system is needed. We realized that we need something that's cloud-based in order to simplify a number of things that our team is doing in order to help their lives. So actually our updated technology is due to both necessity and to keeping up with our industry. And we all know technology does not have a long shelf life. Does anybody here have a phone that is older than 2 or 3 years old? I think mine is probably at least 3 years old. But most of us are constantly updating technology. So and really the reason is because we're trying to protect our information. Older technology just happens to be more vulnerable to cybercrime. And I know in our industry, it is critical to keep the information safe. And speaking from experience, try to spread out any technology rotation. Don't do it all in 1 year because then down the road, you will probably have to replace everything again in the same year. And that just becomes too costly, especially when you have other things that you have to pay for.
And too stressful.
It is very stressful. Yeah. And the more that you need, oh, wow. Oh, yeah, it's just a whole long thing. Moving on to business continuity plans. And I think we'll start this one off with a question too. Does anybody here have a business continuity plan? And again, I know some of these answers, but anybody, and I can't see hands, so anybody just feel free to speak up.
Yes.
Yeah, Pat. Anybody else? I know Heidi.
Yes,
Who is the yes?
Heidi.
Heidi, okay.
What is a business continuity plan?
So and that's exactly what we're getting into. And before the pandemic, I don't know that most business owners gave it much of a thought, but now it really should be top of mind because there could be something that could cause us not to be able to open our doors tomorrow. So even for a solopreneur, a business continuity plan is critical. So the most common things that are addressed in a business continuity plan are what happens if there's an extended illness or a disability or severe weather. And when I'm talking severe weather, I'm not talking just a snowstorm that day, but I'm talking about the flooding that's going on in some of the southern states that their businesses are going to be shut down for weeks or months possibly. So all of those things are addressed in a business continuity plan. Anything that could cause your business to shut down involuntarily is probably the best way to do it for an extended amount of time. You can also put in there what happens upon death. And for most small business owners or solopreneurs, that means that the business just ends. But then maybe what does that happen, or what does that do for your loved ones? What did they do? Do they know who they have to turn to? So get this drafted with a business attorney, and then once a year review it. But this is one of those things that I mentioned, do a slower time of the year. Don't try to cram this in at the end of the year, because it's too important of information in order to just try to quickly get it done and check it off your list. So do it earlier. And update it every single year, because whatever changes have taken place over the last year, you're going to want to address in it. So for instance, if you were working out of a home and then decided, I'm going to have a storefront location. So Mary Claire, you have a place now where you're exhibiting all of your beautiful pictures or prints. And so now you want to address that in your business continuity plan versus just being home. So business continuity plans are critical. You're going to want to talk to a business attorney. Any questions on that? All right, so like the title of the slide says, simple to-dos. These next few tasks are relatively simple, but more importantly, probably not too time consuming. First, you're going to want to review upcoming lease and rental agreements. That could include real estate, automobiles, equipment, anything that you lease or rent in your business. Check to see first if your needs have changed, and then see if you can get renewal estimates as soon as possible, because you're going to want to be aware of any major cost increases, or possibly, if it's not even possible, to renew your lease, which we've run into before. So if you run into either of those, where it's a major cost increase or you can't renew the lease, then it's going to take some time, because you're going to have to do some research. So that's one of those great things to do earlier in the year instead of doing it last minute. Next, prepare your 2022 files, or whatever year it's going to be, but 2022 for us. While tedious, this is the huge sense of accomplishment when you get that done and you can put them to the side and say, okay, I'm ready to start next year with organized files.
We have a party every year.
For
Yeah,
files?
yeah. When we get all the files, it's very, I have some people who feel very fulfilled by the folders, and we got the backups, and then they're all labeled, and
Yep.
so it's an organization thing. So I recognize that, and we have a little celebration every year when we do this.
That's so great. I don't do the files, but for some reason, having files done is one of those things that makes me very happy. So I'm not sure what that says about my personality, but I do like top files. Third, make sure whatever licenses or certifications that are needed for your industry are done. I don't want to gloss over it. And Heidi and I know that we are constantly renewing licenses or certificates, or doing training that has to be done by August or October 31st, or there's always something. So we always say stay compliant, just get these things done, because you don't want to be stopped from being able to open your doors for that.
I'd also chime in with have a tracker 3 months in advance, so you're not scrambling to get continuing ed credits.
Yeah. I know that we get bombarded with emails. You have 60 days, you have 30 days, you have 15 days. All right, do it today.
Anxiety provoking.
Yeah, exactly.
And we have the same, we use a smart sheet. It's cloud-based for the whole team, and it sends alerts. And if it isn't done within like a certain period of time in advance, then it notifies me. And, but it's a constant treadmill.
It is. It really is. And you both make a great point in that utilizing some kind of technology to remind you. I mean, we have a client contact management system, but even if you don't have that and you use your phone for reminders, or just having something there so that it's one thing that you can take out of your head, and you know that something will pop up to remind you, and don't be using sticky notes everywhere, because those eventually fall off and get lost. So finding a system that works for you to keep track of these things is great. Lastly, you'll want to check in with your CPA and or other advisors. Most people don't tend to connect with their CPA until it's time to file the tax returns, but reaching out to them now could lead to a discussion about strategic tax moves that can be made prior to the end of the year. If you wait until January 2nd even, it's probably too late. So for example, they could talk to you about utilizing your Section 179 deduction, or about a new tax credit availability, or what your retirement account contributions should be made. And we'll talk about that in a second. And also employee and retention hiring incentives. Especially after the pandemic, right now, there's a lot that is available out there for small business owners. And you might not be aware of it, but your accountant is. So checking in with them to see if there's something that you could take advantage of or be aware of before the end of the year, now is a great time to do it. Also, make your appointment with them. First, make sure that they're still available come the new season, because that could be awful if you have to be searching for a new CPA. And then just make your appointment now so you're not scrambling at the last minute. And they do tend to provide you with a year-end tax checklist. And I know one more checklist to look at, but it is really helpful in order to trigger things that you might not remember by the end of the year. Okay, so here we're going to briefly touch on retirement account contributions. And I'll preface this with that regardless of your business, you should have a retirement account. If you're a solopreneur, you could have a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA, which only require minimal investments or have minimal investments. You could do a SEP, which is a simplified employer pension plan, or a solo 401k. And those allow for larger contributions than the IRA or Roth IRA. For a small business with at least a few employees, you could do the SEP that was just mentioned, or a regular 401k, or even a simple IRA. So each of those have pros and cons, with contribution limits and tax incentives, ease and cost of implementation, ongoing expenses and responsibilities. There's so much information to look at and to research and to go through that this is something definitely best done with your advisor, and they can help figure out what fits you and your business the best. From an employer perspective, any money that you put in on behalf of an employee has major tax advantages, and as well as provides a reason for the employee to stay with you, which we like. From an individual perspective, if you're working for yourself, you need to be worried about your retirement because nobody else is going to be worried about this for you. So of course I could speak on this for hours, but my recommendation really is to contribute as much as your finances will allow you, which really means that what you do and how much you should do shouldn't be made until after your financial documents are done, so that way you know what is available. Does anybody have any questions here before we move on? Because I know that this is a lot of information in a really short amount of time. Nope. Okay. All right. So while we don't have a business that includes an inventory of goods, and a lot of us here are service providers, inventory should be a separate task on the checklist for everybody, because it is one of those things where you might have things that should be inventoried, like furniture and equipment, which we keep a list of ourselves. And it's important because one, if you have employees, you want to make sure that there's no borrowing going on. And two, for your CPA or tax person, they're going to want to use that for depreciation on your taxes. So again, inventory is one of those things that can be done earlier in the year so that you're not scrambling at the end of the year. And I love this picture, and that there's a million things that these women are counting in this picture. Now, this would give me stress.
That puts my inventory in perspective, that picture.
Doesn't it? I mean, we were looking for something to represent inventory, and we came across this and I was like, oh my goodness. I can't.
Nightmare. Word association nightmare.
Yeah.
When I worked in retail and we had to do inventory, it was the dreaded night of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah. but it had to be better than that. All right, so a question. Well, and a few of you have mentioned that you're solopreneurs, and a few of you that have mentioned that you are employers. So we'll just say then that anybody that said that they have employees have these extra items on their list. And of course, you know, bigger businesses does mean more responsibilities. So we'll go through these quickly so that we don't take too long here. So the first thing is having a handbook and reviewing it. So first of all, if you do have employees, you need a handbook. You just want to make sure that it covers everything that you want it to in there. Has anything changed? For instance, during the pandemic, if you had employees, did you allow them to work remotely? And if so, is that addressed in your handbook now? And I bring that up because that was one of the things on my list, and I only recently addressed it, and it could have been addressed months ago, but I had put it to the side. You'll also want to see if you have things in there such as over the last year, did you decide to increase paid time off because you know that your employees need it? So that should go in there. Or did you decide to implement a health insurance plan? Or did you increase the amount of the contribution that you're making to the health insurance plan on behalf of your employees? Whatever the changes that you made, you're going to want to put it in there because any new employees coming on really want to see that stuff. A little side note is you are going to want to determine if you want all of your employees in the same classification or if you want different classifications with them. Regardless of what your answer is, you're going to want to consult with a business attorney or HR consultant on this because it is a lot of work and it's a legal document. So you're going to want to make sure that everything is correct in there. Let's see. At the same time, while you are reviewing your handbook, you could be reviewing your benefits to make sure that those are all in there. And also at the same time, looking at year-end bonuses or pay increases if they need to be made. Make sure you know what your finances can handle because whatever you give to somebody, it is harder to take back. So if you give raises, you're going to want to keep them at that level. You're not going to be able to drop them back down usually. On there is also develop a succession plan, which is similar to a business continuity plan, except this really details what happens if you are unable to lead your business due to something. In the service industry, this is critical for clients to know that there's somebody there in order to keep the business going if you're not there. So the first thing that you need is somebody that you can trust and that hopefully that they're willing to keep the doors open for you. Next, you're going to want a business attorney for this as well, because they're going to draft this document. And it's, again, one of those living documents where it's going to change every single year, depending on what your business is doing, and just reviewing it. And during a slower time of year is great for this. And then lastly, if incorporated, you're going to want to have a shareholders meeting, which pretty much covers everything that we talked about today. You know, how are the financials doing? Do we have anything that we want to address from the SWOT? Do we need to hire somebody? Is our employee handbook good? And, you know, is everybody at the same percentage of ownership? So shareholders meeting important, done at the end of the year normally. Finally, it's time to celebrate our year end. The first thing that you want to do is thank anybody that helped you get through the year, whether that is your team or clients, customers, and you can thank them with a short note or verbally or with a gift. Then if you have a team, have a little party, just acknowledging their hard work over the last year. 2020 was hard. 2021 hasn't been any easier. So really just celebrate it. Take the time to look back on the last year and how far your business has come, and where your business is today. You know, we have to really be grateful that we have survived and sometimes thrived, hopefully, and that we've got everything done on our checklist and that we are ready to start 2022 and ready for whatever it may bring us. So I would love to open it up to questions if there's anything that we haven't already addressed. But more importantly, I would love to know what people do to survive the end of the year. You know, do you have a helpful tip on something that you do that's fun or interesting, or, what do you do? And it doesn't even have to be in your business lives, what just gets you through the end of the year. And that is it.
Thanks, Christina. I actually had a question about insurance. I found this year, I review my insurance every year. Well, but some years I think I do it better than other years in terms of when it comes up to renew my insurance. And this year I happened to discover that my coverage wasn't enough for what I needed it to be. And I was so grateful that I had a long conversation with this insurance agent, and we were able to correct that. And, it was something that I don't think about, I just do. But this particular time I was much more careful and did a really much deeper analysis. So that really made a difference for me. I was relieved on that, but it's something that I think we tend to forget.
It is, and I think I kind of skipped over that in the presentation, but reviewing your insurance coverage, same idea, just making sure that it's meeting your needs. And we have to do the same thing for our liability for our employee plans, our retirement plans, and making sure that there's enough there to cover in case something were to happen. But yeah, checking that every year. And again, it's something that you could do earlier in the year. It doesn't necessarily have to be at the end.
I actually
Also business liability insurance, umbrella policies,
yeah.
and paying
Good
attention to your
insurance
underlying limits of what you have on everything else.
And having a contact, like you said, Mary Claire, to somebody that you can call versus just going online and purchasing it yourself. If you have an insurance agent, they'll be looking at your entire business or personal and really determining what your needs are.
Yeah, I think I found that really helpful. I work with a local agency, and they reached out to me and said, have you reviewed? In fact, 2 people on the staff asked me that, and I went, oh, I haven't done it. And this was midsummer actually is when I do it. And yeah. And the conversation made me realize, oh my gosh, I'm not covered to the extent I need to be. So it was really good. You asked about what end of year or early year.
Yes.
I do a lot of just grateful that I think obviously family celebration and stuff, but for me, for the business, it's about celebrating what I've accomplished. And looking forward and maybe planning some new things to learn, new things to do for the next year.
That's great. Keeps your sanity.
Oh, well, no. Well, yeah.
Well, no. Well, oh yeah.
I'm in good company here. You all know that was gone a long time ago, but I still, yeah, it does. It's a great way to keep your sanity and to celebrate what you've done, because we too often forget to celebrate our accomplishments. So
I think that's been a common theme, right? With everything that we're talking about, is that sometimes we concentrate on the negative. And so, really looking back and going, I might not have done that. But don't let that be the, dictate your year. It's, I did do this and got through it. Pat yourself on the back.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to share? All right, Heidi, I'm going to ask you, what do you do to stay sane?
What makes you think I have?
I was going to say the same thing, Heidi.
I don't stay sane. What do I do to stay? I play pickleball. I took up bicycle riding because I used to work out at the gym many mornings a week, and gyms are problematic for me. I know some people go, but I think, too much close contact. So I took up bicycle riding, and when I get out, I try to ride at least 10 miles, and I do these high-speed bicycle rides and just have a ball.
And now you're going to Florida, so that helps definitely.
Yeah, that keeps me sane. Knowing that I can work in a warm climate.
Yeah.
Because we opened up another branch in Florida, so being able to work remote is just wonderful. And scheduling the calendar around life, around things that are important to me. I play pickleball at 8 to 10 almost every morning. So my first appointment doesn't start till 10. And that really works well.
Pat?
I'm in Heidi's camp. I haven't, one upside of the pandemic and working from home is more time. I've used that time for bike riding and long walks, and I can say to be more regularly in touch with family and friends, because it's been a conscious thing to do. So, and I have always taken the New Year's Eve sort of celebration. To me always was a appreciation for gratitude sort of feeling. I think my parents started us on that before I realized that it was because they had 5 kids and so they needed to stay home with us. That's what we did. And then on the first, do some initial planning. I'm usually with friends at a weekend retreat, and we all together, basically, although sort of privately for part of the day, do some planning for the coming year. Like sort of block out, we plan when we will connect with each other as much as possible, because if it's not in the calendars, if people are further apart, then it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So I have found those traditions to be very helpful to me, to try to keep as sane as I can.
Thank you. Eve, Andy, Melanie?
Sure, I'll jump in. I think one of the main things to not be in panic mode by the end of the year is really looking at those things that you can do throughout the year, so that when you get to the end of the year, they're not all piled up. And I think especially with bookkeeping, really making sure to keep on top of regularly updating everything rather than going through the receipts at the end of the year. And I guess more on a personal level, kind of changing a little bit how I think about productivity. And I think in a lot of previous places that I work, it was very, so task oriented that it was easy to lose sight of that there are other things that are important besides meeting this particular deadline or getting this project done. And so I've been a little bit better of, if I'm in the middle of the day and I have the flexibility to do so, I'm not meeting with a client and a friend or family member calls out of the blue, picking up the phone call and spending an hour on the phone. And even if I don't get a project done, I got to spend time with that person and just going, yeah, that is important, and really keeping that in mind. And echoing what people have said about exercising, the going out, walking the dog, and also actually sitting down to have a meal and not eating at my desk. Like, those are my non-negotiables. Like, I have to take time away from whatever I'm doing and focus on those things.
All great.
I've actually done something similar to what Melanie's talking about in terms of my personal life, and just like being done with work at 5 o'clock, just even, walking out of my office, which is in my home, and, no, I don't actually physically shut the door, but I make the conscious effort to not go in there. And same thing on weekends. I really, have trained my clients that I pretty much don't work on the weekends. So that if I do decide to get a project done, it's not going to have anything to do with interacting with clients. It's just, which just keeps everything a little more calm.
It sounds like a lot of people have learned to set boundaries, both for themselves and for everybody else. That definitely helps.
Let's be
Andy?
real, there's never enough time to do it all.
No. I was talking to my daughter last night, and she's a senior this year, and she said, Mom, I'm getting pulled in so many different directions. I don't know how to find the time. And I'm thinking, my God, we do this at such a young age and we don't realize it. And it just continues on and on and on. So that's, I'm going to be helping her try to figure out how not to get spread too thin and feel like you have to do everything. It's not possible. So anything else? I think we are all set.
I think we are too. Andy or anybody, did anyone else have other comments?
I really enjoyed this, Christina.
Thank you.
It was very
Yeah.
helpful to take the time to,
No,
Yeah.
thank you. It's
and
so much
see
fun.
everybody else. Okay.
You
It
know,
was
it's great when it's small because then we all get to interact versus it just being me talking.
Yeah, that's
That's what, and we really tried to make that happen with our chapter meetings, just so that we, even when it's bigger, we really love that interaction, because I think we all need it. But I really love this presentation. I've got lots of notes, and it was wonderful to have the interaction and learn from others as well. So that is always wonderful. So I'm so appreciative, Christina, and thanks to everyone else who came too. We really appreciate your energy.
Mhm.
Wow.
And
Well, if I
had a-
don't see some of you before the year end, Happy New Year.
Oh, I hope we do see each other, Pat. You had something.
I had a quick request.
Oh, yeah.
If unless I missed it, which it's possible, I wondered if maybe Melanie and others, if we could look at a meeting focused on, I would be interested in how tools and tips for how to basically keep yourself well. So that business can sort of thrive. So it's your physical health. And this came up, Melanie, because we were, Mary Claire and I had lunch a couple of weeks ago outdoors in Richmond, and your name came up, and Mary Claire was sharing that you had a whole thing like on which shoes.
Oh,
And,
yes.
and then I think that very next day or something, someone stopped me in the grocery store and asked about the shoes I was on, and then something else came, and I had never really thought about that. Someone else said, oh, these were new. That was the first day they were wearing them. But but I was thinking between shoes and some of the apps now in
Mhm.
terms of tracking you, helping you track you. Anyway, and if you're not comfortable with it, but I just think of you for health, things like that. Anyway, so that would be a request of something I would personally be.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's somebody that does more. Either we could do like a panel setup and have a few different people. Like I'm looking at Andy actually thinking about the breaking free from sugar. So maybe Andy talking about more of the food side of things. Maybe we could find somebody that that does more exercise related, and then maybe somebody that does sort of overall wellness coaching and goal setting. Either do a panel setup like that, or find somebody that does cover kind of a mix of different things. But yeah, I love that idea.
Eve could even chime in on tips on bookkeeping, because I think it's probably a shortfall for a lot of entrepreneurs, and they're embarrassed to admit it.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
tips of how to get your finances in order from the baseline bookkeeping that a lot of people don't do well.
Yeah, well, and now it's a good time to be thinking about, okay, I got to finish up last year, this year that we're ending, but also like I want to get started on a good note for the coming year. But I'm thinking about Pat's idea and Melanie, your panel idea, and wondering maybe you could do a series
Mhm.
a series of meetings that are about different aspects of how do I,
Financial health and
Well,
wellness,
Yeah.
trifecta. I gotta chime out, CFOs tuning in 60 seconds. So thank you, everybody.
No,
Thanks,
All right.
Heidi.
Gotta go
Heidi.
talk to our CFO.
okay.
See you guys.
Take care, Heidi.
I will be excited to hear all that stuff too. All right, I'm leaving. Have a great day.
Thank you.
so much,
Thank you.
Bye.
you go too.
Thanks,
Take
Andy.
care.